Linus Baker lived a life that could only be described as gray. Gray walls, gray sky, gray suits, gray days that melted into one another. Every morning, he woke up to the blaring alarm, fed his overweight cat Calliope, and made a single slice of toast before heading to his dull job at Dickomy, the department in charge of magical youth. Linus wasn't special. He wasn't brave. He wasn't remarkable. He was simply careful. He believed in rules. Rules kept chaos away. Rules kept him safe. His job: inspecting orphanages where magical children lived. Children who could set the world on fire, literally. Children who could accidentally sink a town or charm a village, or turn a person into a frog. Linus wrote reports about them. Cold, structured, emotionless reports. He didn't dislike the kids. He didn't like them either. He just followed the handbook, the massive rules and regulations manual that told him how to breathe, walk, and think. Every day he rode the bus. Every day it rained. Every day he walked past the same people who never looked up. Linus believed that this was all life had to offer. Until one day, he was summoned to the extremely upper management. A place no one ever went willingly. A place hidden behind large steel doors, where the air tasted like secrets. Linus had never been called there. And the moment he stepped in, he felt something shift, as if the world had tilted just an inch to the left. 3 shadowy figures sat behind a long desk. He never saw their faces, only silhouettes. Their voices were smooth and unsettling. "Mr. Baker," they said, "we have a special assignment for you. Not an ordinary magical orphanage. Well, an island. Classified location. A case so rare, so dangerous." It was stamped extreme priority. The folder was thick and heavy. When Linus opened it, his breath caught. Inside were profiles of 6 children. A gnome girl who loved gardening more than people. A shapeshifter who couldn't control his form. A wyvern who collected buttons. A green blob named Chauncey who dreamed of being a hotel bellhop. A silent magical child with unknown powers. And the last one, rumbled like thunder. Name Lucy. Short for Lucifer. Antichrist. Linus's heart nearly fell out of his chest. The shadowy manager spoke. "You will evaluate whether these children are a threat to the world. You will observe their caretaker, Arthur Parnassus. And you will report back to us. With complete objectivity." Linus swallowed. His life had always been boring, predictable, safe. But something in that folder pulled him in. Fear, curiosity, destiny. And then came the final instruction. "You are to live on the island for 1 month. No exceptions." Before he could speak, the meeting was over. He left the room holding the folder tightly, not knowing his entire world was about to explode into color. The island at the edge of the world. Linus had never traveled this far for an assignment. He boarded a train that rattled through sleepy towns, took a bus that smelled faintly of old sandwiches, and finally a ferry captain with a crooked beard grunted, "You going to the island? God help you." The ocean felt endless, a sheet of blue stretching into silence. Gray clouds hovered above, but for the first time in his life, Linus felt something in his chest. Excitement, or maybe fear. The ferry stopped at a tiny wooden dock. A sign creaked in the wind. "Welcome to Marcius Island." He stepped off, clutching his suitcase and the huge rules and regulations book. A narrow path led upward toward the orphanage, surrounded by shimmering green trees and bright wildflowers. It looked nothing like the dangerous place he expected. Halfway up, a creature suddenly rushed at him. Small wings, tiny claws, a lizard-like face with bright intelligent eyes. Linus froze. The creature landed on a branch, chest puffed proudly. "I am Theodore," it chirped, sounding more like excited squeaks than words. A wyvern, incredibly rare. He held out a shiny metal button to Linus as a greeting. Linus blinked. "Thank you." Theodore bowed dramatically and flew off. Linus continued up the path until he reached the orphanage. A huge, beautiful house sitting on a cliff, with the ocean roaring behind it. It wasn't scary. It wasn't dark. Felt like home. The front door swung open. Tall man stepped out. Sunlight glowed around him. His hair was sandy brown, slightly messy. His eyes warm, goldish, and impossibly calm. He wore a sweater, simple trousers, and a gentle smile. "Welcome, Mr. Baker," he said softly. "I'm Arthur Parnassus. We've been expecting you." Arthur extended a hand. Linus shook it, stunned by the warmth of his touch. Arthur guided him inside the orphanage. The moment the door closed, chaos erupted. A small green blob bounced forward. Literally hopped. "Hello, sir. My name is Chauncey." It boomed, sounding like a cheerful foghorn. "I aspire to be a bellhop." Linus blinked. "A bellhop?" "Yes, sir. At a hotel. I have been practicing holding luggage." The blob tried lifting Linus' suitcase but toppled over, giggling. Then another voice, sharp, quick. "Watch where you're bouncing, Chauncey." A tiny older-looking girl with a beard braided into 2 braids stomped forward. Her name tag read Talia. "I'm a gnome," she said grumpily. "Don't touch my garden. I will bite you." Linus gulped. "Duly noted." A boy walked in next. Sweet, shy, dark hair. No weight fur. No feathers. He shifted rapidly, transforming into different animals. "I'm Sal," he whispered. "I'm sorry for being like this." Linus' heart hurt for him. Before he could respond, the room suddenly became freezing cold. Lights flickered. A soft humming filled the air. A child in a white robe floated into the hallway. No face was visible under the hood. Arthur whispered to Linus. "That's Zoe. She's still figuring herself out." Zoe waved with a tiny hand that glowed faintly. Linus tried waving back, trembling. Arthur clapped his hands. "And one more child. He's in the music room." Linus followed Arthur, footsteps echoing in the long hallway. The door creaked open. A small boy sat at a piano, pressing keys lightly with delicate fingers. Black hair, pale skin, eyes too old for his age. He turned slowly. "Hello," he said. His voice echoed strangely, like 2 voices overlapping. "I'm Lucy." Linus swallowed, palms sweating. "Lucy, short for..." The boy smiled with sharp teeth. "Lucifer." A small flame danced on his fingertip. Linus instinctively stepped back. Arthur touched his arm gently. "Lucy is not dangerous," he said softly. "Not unless he's afraid." Lucy giggled. "Don't worry, Mr. Baker. I only end the world on Tuesdays." Linus nearly fainted. Arthur laughed lightly. "He's joking." "Mostly." Linus turned to the caretaker, confused. Arthur looked calm, too calm, as if he lived every day knowing one child could theoretically summon demons. "Mr. Baker," Arthur said, "I hope you'll judge the children with your heart, not just your handbook." Linus clutched his book tighter. "That's not how the system works." Arthur gave him a look that made something twist inside Linus' chest. "Then perhaps the system is wrong." The first days on Marcius Island. Linus settled into the guest room Arthur prepared for him. It was clean, bright, and unexpectedly warm. Soft blankets, a view of the ocean, a tiny vase with a single yellow flower. Linus wasn't used to such tenderness. His apartment back home felt like a box. This room felt like someone cared. That made him uncomfortable. He unpacked slowly, placing the rules and regulations book on the nightstand, as if it were a shield against this strange new world. Breakfast chaos. Morning came with a knock. Arthur's voice floated through the door. "Breakfast is ready." Linus opened the door cautiously and froze. The hallway was a battlefield. Theodore zoomed past dragging a sock. Chauncey bounced excitedly with a tray twice his size. Talia was threatening to bury someone in the garden. Zoe hovered upside down for no reason at all. Arthur stood calmly in the middle, smiling. "Busy morning," he said. Linus whispered. "This is insane." Arthur winked. Welcome to Marsyas. At the dining table, Linus tried focusing on his breakfast. But it was impossible. Chauncey tried serving him water but spilled half of it. Theodore stole a slice of toast and ran. Talia lectured Linus about worms. And Lucy leaned in close, whispering, "If you don't finish your eggs, I'll unleash the apocalypse." Linus dropped his fork. Arthur said gently, "Lucy." Inside voice. Lucy sighed loudly. "Yes, father." Linus stared at Arthur. "Father." Lucy saw him as a parent. Caretaker. Not a warden. Not an authority figure. Father. Arthur must have seen the confusion in Linus' eyes because he said quietly, "I love them. All of them. As my own." Linus didn't know how to respond. Love wasn't a word used at Dickomy. He simply wrote in his notebook. Day 1. The children appear chaotic but affectionate towards their caretaker. Unclear if this affects their magical stability. Arthur's secret harmony. After breakfast, Arthur gave Linus a tour of the island. The garden, the cliffs, the greenhouse, the children's individual spaces. Everything looked handmade, touched with care. Arthur spoke softly the whole time, but every now and then, Linus felt a strange energy around him, as if there was more to Arthur than the calm caretaker he showed. His presence felt magical. But Linus dismissed the thought. He focused on his assignment. Testing Linus. The children wanted to test him. Talia asked him if gnomes could legally own property. Chauncey asked if he would support his dream of being a bellhop. Sal apologized every 20 seconds for merely existing. And Lucy followed Linus everywhere, whispering, "Are you afraid of me?" Linus tried to keep his voice steady. "A little." Lucy grinned. "Good. Fear keeps people alive." But then Lucy suddenly looked sad. "Do you think I'm bad?" he asked quietly. Linus froze. No one had asked him that before. Not even human children. Lucy's small face trembled just slightly. "I didn't ask to be Lucifer," he whispered. "I just am." Something changed in Linus. He bent down and said softly, "I think you're a child." Lucy blinked. Then he turned red and ran away, embarrassed by his own emotions. Arthur, who witnessed the scene from afar, gave Linus a look filled with something warm. Respect. A storm arrives. That night, a storm rolled over the island. Thunder cracked open the sky. Waves crashed violently below the cliff. Linus was terrified of storms. He always had been. Lightning made the room flash white. Wind screamed against the window. Suddenly, knock, knock, knock. The door creaked open. Arthur stood there, drenched. "Linus, the children are scared. Could you help me comfort them?" "Me?" Linus stammered. "I'm just an inspector." Arthur shook his head. "No. Tonight you're part of the house." The words hit Linus like a wave. Part of the house. Together they went to the common room. The children huddled under blankets. Chauncey shook like jelly. Sal shifted uncontrollably. Zoe glowed bright with fear. Lucy paced, muttering ancient words under his breath. Arthur opened his arms. They ran to him. He held all of them, 6 magical children, as if he were a shield between them and the storm. Linus watched in awe. Arthur whispered calming words. "Not magic, just love." Slowly peace settled. Then Lucy whispered, "Can Linus sit with us too?" The other children looked up, waiting. Linus hesitated. Storms terrified him too. But something inside him moved. He walked over slowly, sat beside them. The children leaned against him, small and warm. Talia held his sleeve. Chauncey wrapped a little tentacle around his hand. And Lucy whispered, "See, you're not so scary after all." Linus looked at Arthur. Arthur's eyes softened. In that moment, thunder roared outside. But Linus felt strangely safe. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The island begins to change him. The storm passed. leaving the island washed clean and shining. Salt hung in the morning air. Sunlight slid over the waves like spilled gold. Even the house seemed to breathe easier. Linus, however, woke up with a strange feeling. Lightness. Not happiness, he didn't know what that felt like. But something quieter. Something like, the world wasn't as heavy as yesterday. Morning with the children. When he stepped into the kitchen, he found an unbelievable scene. Arthur was cooking pancakes. Lucy was flipping one telekinetically. Zoe hovered over the table setting plates. Chauncey wore a tiny bow tie, practicing being a professional server. Theodore sat on the top shelf, proudly holding berries in his claws. Talia glared at the toaster as if daring it to misbehave. Sal sat at the table with a book bigger than his entire torso. Linus stood there stunned. Arthur laughed softly. "Good morning, Mr. Baker. Coffee?" Linus blinked. "Yes, please." Arthur poured him a cup. Their fingers brushed slightly. It sent a small spark running up Linus's arm. He pretended not to notice. They all ate together. Lucy told dramatic stories about destroying kingdoms in his dreams. Zoe hummed softly, making silverware float. Chauncey kept calling Linus sir, and asking if he had luggage for him to carry. Talia said loudly, "When you die, Mr. Baker, can I have your bones?" Linus choked. Arthur patted his back, struggling not to laugh. "It's a gnome thing," he said. "They love bones." Linus wrote in his notebook. Day 3. Children are terrifying, overwhelming, unpredictable, and oddly charming. Linus and Sal. Later that day, Sal approached Linus in the garden. The wind brushed the tall grass. Seagulls cried overhead. Sal stood nervously, shifting between human, fox, human again. "I'm sorry I'm like this," he whispered. Linus crouched beside him. "Like what?" "Scared. Won't it change when I panic? I can't control it." Linus's voice softened. "You're not wrong. You're a boy. A sensitive one." Sal looked at him, eyes watery. "No one at Dickomy ever said that to me," he whispered. Linus swallowed hard. This job was supposed to be neutral, objective, unemotional. But Dickomy had trained him to see children as risks, not as people. Here on this island everything felt different. Everything felt warmer. Arthur's gentle power. One afternoon, Linus found Arthur sitting on the edge of the cliff, gazing at the sea. He joined him quietly. "What are you thinking about?" Linus asked. Arthur smiled, that soft, unreadable smile. "How the world is big," he said. "And how these children, they don't fit into boxes. And they shouldn't have to." Linus hesitated. "Is it true you never use magic?" Arthur lowered his gaze. "I didn't say that," he replied softly. "I said I prefer not to." Linus frowned. Prefer. He had never seen Arthur use magic. Never seen him raise his voice. Never seen him lose control. But something in his presence felt powerful. Something old, quiet, and bright. Arthur continued. "If I show them fear or force, they will learn fear. If I show them love, they will learn love." His words echoed through Linus. He wrote in his notebook, "Arthur Parnassus. Unusually empathetic. Possibly magical in a way I cannot yet define." The first walk into town. After a week, socialization day arrived. A mandatory requirement in Linus's report. They needed to take the children to the village for exposure to non-magical people. Linus dreaded it. The last time magical children interacted with regular humans, the event made national headlines. But Arthur said gently, "They need hope. The world must try to meet them halfway." They took the ferry together. Linus, Arthur, and all 6 children. Lucy hummed ominous hymns. Talia held a garden spade for protection. Chauncey bounced so high he nearly fell overboard twice. Theodore perched on Arthur's shoulder like a tiny dragon guardian. The village was quiet. Mall shops, old stone buildings, a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and warm bread. As they walked in, villagers stared. Some stepped back. Some whispered. One woman pulled her child behind her. Sal flinched. Zoe dimmed her glow. Chauncey lowered his head. Arthur's voice was calm but firm. "We are here as friends." No one replied. Then, unexpectedly, a cheerful voice called out, "Arthur, you brought your little ones." It was Helen, the mayor of Marsyas. A big, fierce woman with a booming laugh. She marched right up, kissed Arthur on the cheek, and said to Linus, "You must be the bureaucrat. Good luck with these rascals." She took Lucy's hand calmly, told Talia she loved her garden. "High-five, Chauncey," teased Sal gently. The villagers stared, confused. If the mayor wasn't afraid, why should they be? Slowly, people softened. The baker offered cookies. A fisherman let Theodore sit on his boat. A tailor showed Zoe bright pieces of cloth, and she lit up like a star. Chauncey got to carry actual luggage when a tourist walked by. Linus watched stunned. This was not dangerous. This was not chaos. This was community. And Arthur didn't guide them with orders. He guided them with love. Soft moment. On the ferry ride back, Linus felt the sea breeze on his face. Arthur stood beside him, gazing at the sunset. "It went better than expected," Linus said softly. Arthur smiled at him, a real smile, open and warm. "Because you were with us." Linus's heart stumbled. For a moment the world wasn't gray. It was orange and gold and full of possibility. Arthur's hidden truth begins to surface. The days flowed gently on Marsyas Island. Morning sunlight on the waves. Chauncey practicing his bellhop stance. Talia terrorizing the garden. Theodore collecting shiny things. Zoe floating around like a quiet moon. Sal sitting under trees writing poetry in tiny, careful lines. Lucy trying and failing to be intimidating. And Linus, he was changing. He didn't rush. He didn't hide behind rules. He didn't feel the crushing weight of routine. The island was softening him. A new ritual. Every evening, Linus walked along the cliff path after dinner. He loved the sound of the waves crashing below, the cold wind against his cheeks, and the distant glow of the lighthouse. One of those evenings, he found Arthur sitting there again, legs crossed, staring into the horizon. Linus approached slowly. "You're everywhere," Arthur said without turning. His tone wasn't annoyed. It was warm, amused. "It's a small island," Linus said. Arthur patted the rock beside him. Linus sat, feeling oddly nervous for reasons he couldn't explain. Arthur gently said, "You're settling in." Linus looked at his shoes. "I suppose so. The children are beginning to tolerate me." Arthur chuckled. "Tolerate? They adore you." Linus's heart skipped. "Adore? I'm just doing my job." Arthur turned, eyes soft. "You're doing more than that." The moment lingered, quiet, intense. The children trust him. Over the next few days, each child approached Linus privately. "Olia." She dragged him to the garden. "I planted something for you," she said grumpily. Then whispered, "Don't kill it." It was a tiny flower, stubborn, crooked, but growing. Linus felt strangely proud. "Chauncey." He knocked on Linus' door at night. "Sir, if I ever get to be a bellhop, can I carry your bags first?" Linus's heart melted. "Of course, Chauncey." The blob squealed joyfully and bounced away. Theodore. He left a shiny little button on Linus's pillow every night. His way of saying he cared. Zoe. She floated over during dinner and placed a glowing pebble in Linus's hand. "For you," she whispered shyly. Linus didn't know what it meant, but he treasured it. Oh. He approached one afternoon, hands trembling. "Mr. Baker, can I read you one of my poems?" Linus nodded gently. The poem was about change. About fear turning into wings. About people who didn't fit in boxes. Linus's eyes stung. "You're a wonderful writer," he whispered. Sal nearly shifted from emotion. "Lucy." Lucy appeared dramatically in Linus's room one night. "Mr. Baker." Linus jumped. "I made you a protection spell, so you don't get eaten by shadow demons." Linus blinked. "That's very considerate." Lucy looked embarrassed. "Don't tell anyone I was nice. I have a reputation." Linus smiled. For the first time in his life he felt wanted. Cracks in Arthur's calm. But something else was happening too. Linus began noticing cracks in Arthur's perfect calm. One evening, he saw Arthur flinch when Lucy accidentally made a flame too big. Another time, Arthur avoided a question about his own childhood. And once, when Sal panicked and transformed into a wolf, Arthur whispered something soft, ancient, and Sal immediately calmed. It wasn't normal. It wasn't human. Arthur brushed it off every time. But Linus couldn't ignore it. One night, he found Arthur sitting alone in the backyard, the moonlight cold on his face. "Arthur," Linus said softly, "there's something you're not telling me." Arthur didn't look up. "It's not the right time," he whispered. "Are you magical?" Linus asked gently. Arthur closed his eyes. Silence. Then quietly, painfully, "Yes." Linus's breath caught. Arthur looked at him, and his eyes shimmered faintly like embers. Burning softly, quietly, controlled. "I am magical," he said. "But not like the children." "Then how?" Linus whispered. Arthur sighed, a heartbreaking sound. "That's a story for later." He rose, brushing off his clothes. "Come inside, Linus. It's cold." But Linus stayed there, staring at the spot Arthur left. His heart beat faster. Fear. Curiosity. Something else. He didn't know. A letter from Dickomy. The next morning, Linus received a message. A sealed letter delivered by the ferry captain. Linus broke the seal. Inside was a very short note from extremely upper management. "We expect results soon. You are there to judge, not to grow attached." Linus's hands trembled. Judge. Observe. Remain distant. But how could he? These children had become real to him. Arthur had become more than a stranger. He folded the letter sharply. For the first time in his career, Linus felt anger. Dickomy didn't see these kids. They saw risk. But problems. Linus looked around the home, the laughter, the mess, the warmth. He whispered to himself, "They're wrong." A test of trust. As days passed, Marsyas Island felt less like an assignment and more like a quiet miracle. Linus stopped setting alarms. He laughed sometimes. Real laughter, the kind he didn't recognize at first. He even forgot about his handbook once, which shocked him more than anything. But the children noticed this change. They noticed everything. And they decided it was time to test Linus Baker properly. The secret meeting of the six. One evening, when Linus stepped into the garden to watch the sunset, the children huddled inside the house. Talia slammed a tiny fist on the table. "All right, everyone, listen. We need to know if Linus really likes us." Chauncey gasped dramatically. "Of course he likes us. I mean, he let me carry his socks yesterday." Zoe floated slowly, whispering, "He's nice. But does he care?" Sal shifted nervously. "He's trying his best. Maybe we should give him a chance." Lucy stood on a chair, cloak billowing like a tiny villain. "I say we test him with a trial of darkness." Everyone said in unison. "No." Lucy pouted. "Fine. But I want at least one shadow demon." "No." After a long discussion, they created a plan. Chaotic, dangerous, and purely made of love. Linus wakes up into their trial. The next morning, Linus opened his door and jumped. A huge sign hung from the ceiling. "Welcome to the trial of trust." Talia stood below it holding a clipboard. "What is this?" Linus muttered. She cleared her throat proudly. "Your evaluation." "Of me?" "Yes. You think you're the only one who can evaluate people," she snapped. "Stupid." Behind her, Lucy giggled wickedly. Chauncey waved 2 little flags. Zoe floated around glowing pink. Sal shifted his tail nervously. Linus sighed. All right, what do I have to do? Talia smirked. First challenge, follow us. Challenge 1, Lucy's Cave of Doom. The children led Linus into a small rocky cave near the cliffs. Lucy announced loudly. Welcome, mortal. You must walk through the shadow corridor. Linus squinted. It's just a small cave. Lucy snapped his fingers. Darkness swallowed the cave. Faint whispers echoed in the stone walls. Linus stumbled, heart racing, but he forced himself forward. Because behind the fear, he trusted that Lucy wouldn't truly harm him. When he reached the end, Lucy looked disappointed. You didn't even scream, he muttered. I did a little internally, Linus admitted. Lucy's eyes sparkled. Nice. Challenge 2, Chauncey's bellhop training. Back at the house, Chauncey bounced excitedly. Sir, you must let me serve you like a real hotel bellhop. Linus blinked. That's it. Yes. Stand still and let me pretend you're a guest at my hotel. Linus played along, letting Chauncey take his imaginary bags, walk him to the imaginary elevator, and say in a deep professional voice, Welcome to Hotel Marcius. Please rate my service 5 stars. Linus smiled. I'd give it 10. Chauncey froze, trembling. T10. Linus nodded warmly. You worked very hard. Chauncey fell over from excitement. Challenge 3, Sal's Poem of Courage. Sal approached next. He held a piece of paper, hands shaking. Mr. Baker. The challenge is, I want to read you a poem I wrote about you. Linus blinked. For me. Till nodded. His voice cracked as he read. Some people walk softly, but leave warm footprints. Some people arrive quietly, but make a place feel full. His hands trembled. You walk softly, Mr. Baker. Linus swallowed hard. Thank you, Sal. That's beautiful. Sal nearly shifted again from emotion, but he held himself steady. It was a victory. Challenge 4, Theodore's Gift Hunt. Theodore screeched excitedly and tugged Linus toward the trees. He dropped a pile of shiny items, mismatched buttons, marbles, a broken spoon. The challenge. Pick which one Linus believed Theodore would treasure most. Linus crouched, thinking deeply. He picked a small, dull button, a simple thing easily overlooked. Theodore's eyes widened. He chirped loudly, delighted. Arthur, who observed from the porch, smiled quietly. You always see the small things, Arthur said. Linus pretended not to blush. Challenge 5, Zoe's Trust Fall. Zoe floated gently above him. She whispered, Let go. Then suddenly her glow brightened and she fell. Not floated. Fell. Linus gasped and caught her before she hit the ground. Zoe smiled quietly. I knew you would. He held her gently before she floated back up. The final challenge. Talia's judgment. Back in the dining room, Talia tapped her clipboard loudly. Final challenge. Would you protect us? Linus froze. Talia narrowed her eyes. Not in a report. Not in your job. Not because you're supposed to. But because you want to. Linus looked at their faces. Hopeful, fragile, fierce. And without thinking, Yes, he whispered. I would. The room went silent. Lucy blinked. Chauncey sniffled. Sal looked down, overwhelmed. And Talia, grumpiest of them all, whispered, Okay, you pass. Arthur's eyes tell a story. Arthur came behind him quietly. Linus turned. Arthur wasn't smiling. His expression was something deeper. Something grateful, soft, and heartbreakingly vulnerable. Thank you, Arthur said softly. For choosing them. Linus didn't know what to say. He only felt warmth filling the spaces inside him that had been empty for years. Marcius Island wasn't just changing him. It was healing him. Life on Marcius had settled into a warm rhythm. Morning laughter. Arthur's calm footsteps. Sel's poetry. Chauncey's unstoppable enthusiasm. Talia yelling at birds. Theodore stealing spoons. Zoe floating like a small ghost lantern. Lucy loudly declaring daily world domination plans. And in the center of all of it, Linus. He didn't feel like a visitor anymore. He felt like part of something. But the world outside the island didn't stay silent. And danger found its way in. The outsider arrives. It happened during a calm afternoon. Linus was helping Talia plant new flowers. She ordered him around like a general. Arthur was repairing the fence with Sal and Zoe. Lucy's laughter echoed from the house. Then suddenly, the fairy horn blasted. A sound that did not belong to this peaceful day. Arthur's head snapped up instantly. His calm face tightened. "Stay with the children," he said quietly. Arthur's voice cracked. "Because if you knew what I was, you might fear me like everyone else." Linus stared. Arthur, I don't fear you." Arthur looked up, tears shining in his eyes. "You should." Linus shook his head. "No. You protect them. You protect me. I've never felt safer than when I'm with you." Arthur's expression shattered. A mix of relief, pain, and something deeper. He whispered, "Linus, I am not what you think." "Then tell me." But Arthur only whispered, "Inside. The children need us." The moment slipped away. But the truth lingered in the air. A truth Arthur was afraid to say. The children surround them. When they entered the living room, every child ran to them. "Are you okay? Was it a monster? Did anyone get hurt? Arthur, you look pale." Arthur forced a small smile. "It's nothing. Just a forest creature." Lucy stepped forward, eyes burning. "Don't lie to us." Silence. Linus knelt beside Lucy. "It's okay," Linus whispered. "Arthur protected us." Lucy stared at Arthur. "Even if it hurts you." Arthur's expression broke. Lucy stepped closer and hugged him tightly. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," Lucy whispered. Arthur's voice was raw. "I would get hurt 1,000 times to keep you safe." The children all gathered around them. Linus watched, and something in his heart clicked. This wasn't an orphanage. It was a family. And he wasn't an outsider anymore. Alone with Arthur. Later that night, when the children were asleep, Linus found Arthur on the porch. Moonlight washed over him, turning his eyes silver. Linus spoke softly. "You said you're not what I think. So tell me, Arthur. What are you?" Arthur closed his eyes. And whispered. "Something Dickomy would destroy if they knew." Linus's blood ran cold. "Destroy?" Arthur opened his eyes. And for the first time Linus saw the truth. A faint glow beneath his skin. A warmth like fire trapped inside a man. And eyes that held centuries of pain. Arthur wasn't just magical. He was something rare. Something forbidden. Something powerful. Linus whispered, "Arthur, what are you?" Arthur took a trembling breath. And said, "I am the most dangerous magical being Dickomy fears. A phoenix." Arthur's confession hung in the night air like a burning star. Phoenix. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Truly. A magical being of fire and rebirth. Powerful, feared, hunted. Linus's breath shook. Arthur, a phoenix. But phoenixes are mythical. Arthur gave a sad smile. Yes, mythical. Extinct. Dangerous. And according to Dickomy, illegal. Linus stepped back, shocked. Illegal. Arthur continued, voice soft and trembling. "I have lived more years than I can count. Died and returned more times than anyone should. Every rebirth is fire and agony. Every cycle begins with total loss." His eyes glowed faintly, like embers under ash. Linus whispered, "But you look young." Arthur nodded. "I was last reborn about 40 years ago. Here, on Marcius." Linus tried to process. "All this time, you hid who you are." Arthur closed his eyes. I had to. If Dickomy knew what I was, they would take the children. They would take everything. His voice cracked at the last word. Linus stepped closer gently. Why? Why would they take them? Arthur looked into his eyes, fragile and raw. Because they believe that someone like me cannot raise children safely. And that someone like Lucy should not exist at all. Linus felt pain rip through him. Lucy. Ollie. Chauncey. Olia. Theodore. They were in danger because of a system that saw them as weapons, not children. Linus whispered. How did you survive all these years? Arthur took a shaky breath. I used to live hiding, running, burning. I stayed away from everyone. I thought isolation was safer. His voice softened. Until I found them. Arthur's heartbreak. Arthur sat on the porch step. Linus sat beside him. In the dim moonlight, Arthur looked younger. More human. More breakable. When I started this orphanage, Arthur said, I thought it would be temporary. A place for magical children who had nowhere else to go. He looked toward the house, to where the children slept. But they became my reason to live. My reason not to burn again. Linus felt tears sting his eyes. Arthur whispered, I love them more than myself. More than this island. More than my own fear. He looked at Linus, eyes shimmering. And I am terrified every day that the world will take them away. Linus reached out slowly, hesitated, and then placed his hand on Arthur's. Arthur didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined. Tentative, warm, trembling. Linus said softly, I won't let that happen. Arthur squeezed his hand tightly. You can't fight Dickomy alone. Linus shook his head. And you can't hide forever. Arthur's breath hitched. So what do we do, Linus? Linus looked at him. Really looked at him. A man who had lived through fire. A man reborn in pain. A man who chose love despite every reason to fear it. And Linus said the only truth he had. We protect them. Together. Arthur's face softened. And broke. And healed all at once. Together, he whispered. The children listen. Inside the house on the stairs. 6 little figures were huddled together. Listening. Lucy wiped his eyes secretly. Chauncey trembled with emotion. Sal clutched a poem to his chest. Zoe glowed faintly. Theodore chirped sadly. Talia sniffed loudly and whispered. He better keep that promise. They weren't afraid anymore. They trusted Linus. They trusted Arthur. And they trusted them together. Late night healing. Arthur leaned his head gently on Linus's shoulder. Not a dramatic gesture. Not romantic. Just human. Linus froze, then slowly relaxed. The weight of Arthur's head felt natural, honest, tender. They stayed like that for a long time. 2 lonely souls. Finally not lonely. The ocean whispered below them. The night held its breath. For the first time in years, Linus didn't feel like a man following rules. He felt like a man who belonged. Promise. Arthur whispered, half asleep. Linus, if anything happens, promise me you'll save them. Linus turned, eyes fierce. No, he said. I promise we'll save them. All of us. Together. Arthur exhaled shakily. Together, he repeated. Their hands stayed intertwined until the sun began to rise. The next days passed with a heavy tension in the air. The children tried to pretend everything was normal, but they stuck close to Linus and Arthur. Even Lucy stayed unusually quiet. Every time the fairy horn sounded from across the sea, Arthur's shoulders tensed. Every night, Linus watched the children sleep and wondered, how could the world look at them and see danger instead of beauty? How could a system created to protect magical youth be the very thing that harmed them? But the worst came 3 days later. The fairy horn. A long, sharp blast echoed over the water. Arthur froze mid-step. Linus felt his stomach sink. The children peeked from behind the curtains. Talia's voice shook. It's them, isn't it? Arthur exhaled, voice steady but trembling deep beneath. Yes, Lucy growled, tiny flames sparking from his fingertips. I'll turn him into ash. Arthur knelt and held Lucy's face gently. No violence. Not now. Not ever. Lucy clenched his jaw. Chauncey whispered. Linus won't let them take us, right? Linus swallowed. No. Not if I have breath in my body. But inside he was terrified. Werner arrives with reinforcements. Werner stepped off the ferry with 2 assistants, both holding clipboards like weapons. His eyes were ice. Mr. Baker. Mr. Parnassus. Bring the children. Arthur stepped forward. You are not here to interrogate them. Werner brushed past him. I am here to judge if they belong in society. Linus stepped in front of him, the boldest thing he'd ever done. They're children, not experiments. Werner raised an eyebrow. Be careful, Mr. Baker. Your attachment is showing. Linus's fists clenched. Arthur placed a steadying hand on his arm. The evaluation begins. Werner entered the house with heavy steps. The children gathered nervously in a semicircle. Werner pointed his pen at each child like he was counting cattle. Theodore. What is your destructive capability? Theodore screeched in confusion and hid behind Arthur. Oi. Explain your origin. What realm are you from? Zoe dimmed and whispered. I don't know. Werner scribbled something sharply. Chauncey. What use do you have in society? Chauncey wilted, voice tiny. I can carry luggage. Werner snorted. Hardly a skill. Chauncey's tentacles drooped. Oh. Shift for me. Sal flinched. I don't want to. You must. No, Arthur said firmly. He doesn't. Werner glared. Talia. Do you often attack people? Talia screamed. I don't attack people. Unless they touch my garden. Linus had to hold back a laugh. Then Werner turned to Lucy. The room froze. Lucy stared back, unblinking. Lucy, Werner said coldly. State your identity. Lucy's voice echoed unnaturally. I am the Antichrist. Werner smirked. Finally. Honesty. Lucy continued. But I am also a child. And I like chocolate pudding. And Arthur braids my hair when I have nightmares. And I don't want to hurt anyone. Werner's smile faded. Lucy's voice shook. But people like you look at me and see a monster. So sometimes I think I become one in your eyes. Linus's chest tightened painfully. Werner turned to his assistants. Prepare the relocation forms. Chaos exploded. The children panic. Talia screamed. No. Chauncey sobbed. Please don't take us. Sal shifted uncontrollably between shapes. Zoe flickered like a dying star. Theodore screeched in fear. Lucy's tiny hands flamed with black fire. And Arthur. Arthur trembled with rage. Werner pointed at him. You have failed, Mr. Parnassus. You are unfit. And your magical classification makes you a danger. You will be removed from this position. Removed. Separated. Destroyed. Arthur's breath broke. Linus finally breaks free. Something snapped inside Linus Baker. Not loudly. Not violently. Quietly. Desperately. Completely. He stepped between Werner and the children. No. Werner blinked. Pardon. Linus stood taller than he ever had in his life. I said no. You will not take them. You will not break this family. Werner laughed. You are a caseworker. You follow rules. Linus reached into his coat, grabbed the gigantic rules and regulations book, and threw it on the floor. Everyone gasped. Linus's voice shook with fury and truth. I followed rules my whole life. Rules that told me not to get attached. Rules that kept me small. Rules that made me believe these children were threats. He looked at Sal, Zoe, Chauncey, Theodore, Talia, Lucy. But they're not threats. They're kids. He turned to Arthur. And he is the best caretaker I've ever seen. Arthur's eyes filled with tears. Linus's voice grew stronger. If these children are dangerous, it is because of people like you, who never tried to understand them. Werner was speechless. Linus took a deep breath. I will write my report, and it will say the truth. Werner muttered. And what is the truth, Mr. Baker? Linus stepped closer until he was inches from him. That this orphanage is extraordinary. That these children are loved. That Arthur Parnassus is not a threat. He is their protector. And that if Dickomy tries to relocate them. He lifted his chin. I will fight you. The house fell completely silent. Even Lucy stopped burning. Werner stared at Linus. Truly stared. And for the first time, he realized Linus Baker was not the man he once trained. He was someone braver. Someone transformed. Someone with a fire of his own. Werner's voice was ice. You have made a grave mistake. Linus didn't flinch. No, he said softly. For the first time in my life I haven't. Werner's face hardened into something sharp and dangerous. Very well, Mr. Baker, he said slowly. If you choose to side with them, then you leave us no choice. Arthur stepped forward instinctively, eyes burning faintly. What does that mean, Charles? Werner smirked. It means Dickomy will send a full review board. They will arrive in 3 days. And if your home is deemed unsafe. He let the silence finish the sentence. The children trembled. Theodore clung to Arthur's leg. Zoe flickered anxiously. Sal partially shifted again. Chauncey whimpered. Talia gripped her spade like a weapon. Lucy's eyes glowed red. Dark smoke curled around his fingers. Don't, Arthur whispered, holding Lucy's shoulders. We fight with truth, not flames. Lucy's breath shook. I don't have flames because I want to hurt people, Lucy whispered. I have flames because I'm scared. Linus knelt in front of him. I know. And that fear is justified. But I promise. No one is taking you away. Lucy met his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. Promise, he whispered. Linus placed a hand on his face. On my life. Werner's parting threat. Werner turned to leave but paused at the door. You have ruined yourself, Mr. Baker. You were one of our best. Linus swallowed. I was one of your most obedient. Not your best. Werner studied him for a long moment, then spoke quietly. When the review board arrives, they will want proof the children can behave. He looked directly at Lucy. I expect you will fail. Arthur growled under his breath. A deep, terrifying sound Linus had never heard from him. Werner stepped onto the ferry, his coat flapping like a dark wing. The boat pulled away, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The children break down. The moment the ferry disappeared, the children rushed to Linus. Are they really coming to take us? Will they split us up? What if they put me in a cage again? What if I shift in front of them? What if they call me a monster again? What if they close the orphanage? Their voices overlapped, panic rising like a storm. Linus held his hands up gently. Kids, listen. But they were spiraling. Lucy's flames flickered dangerously. Talia stomped angrily at the ground. Chauncey sobbed loudly. Zoe hid behind Sal. Sal turned into a fox out of fear. Theodore screeched from the rafters. Arthur clapped his hands once. A pulse of warmth rippled through the room. Not magic. Or maybe magic in its softest form. Everyone, Arthur said gently. Look at me. Slowly they did. I need you all to remember something, Arthur said softly. No one can take your home unless we let them. The children calmed gradually. Chauncey wiped his tears. Alia huffed. Lucy extinguished his flames. Sal became human again. Arthur knelt in front of them. We will show the review board exactly who we are. Not monsters. Not threats. But a family. Linus nodded. And I will be right beside you. The children looked at him with trust that hit him like a punch to the heart. They believed in him. They believed in Arthur. They believed in their home. Arthur and Linus alone. Later that night, Linus found Arthur alone in the kitchen, hands pressed against the counter. His shoulders shook. Linus approached quietly. "Arthur." Arthur didn't turn around. "If they take them," he whispered, "I'll burn." Linus's heart ached. "Arthur." "No. Listen." Arthur turned around finally, eyes red. "You don't understand. A phoenix is reborn when the world becomes too heavy, when grief is too sharp, when it's too much to bear." He swallowed hard. "If I lose them, I will die and return. But I won't be me anymore." Linus stepped closer. "You're telling me losing them would literally kill you?" Arthur nodded. "Emotionally, spiritually, magically." Linus shook his head, voice trembling with anger and love. "Then we won't let that happen. Not even a chance." Arthur looked up, tears catching in his lashes. "Linus, you've given me hope. But I'm terrified hope won't be enough." Linus reached for his hand. Arthur didn't pull away. "Then we give them more than hope," Linus whispered. "We give them proof." Arthur blinked. "Proof?" Linus nodded firmly. "We show that this home works. We show them love is stronger than fear. We show them these kids are not threats. They're miracles. And we show them that you—" He hesitated, breath shaking. "That you're not alone." Arthur squeezed his hand tighter. "You can't imagine what that means to me, Linus." Linus swallowed. "I think I can." They stood in silence, connected, trembling but determined, preparing for the fight. The next days were filled with planning. Linus practiced interviews with the children. Arthur taught them grounding techniques. Sal wrote a poem to read to the board. Zoe practiced controlling her glow. Chauncey memorized polite greetings. Lucy studied how to calm his fire. Talia prepared a clean garden. Theodore made a pile of shiny welcome gifts. And Linus watched them work together like a true family. At night, he and Arthur prepared the house, cleaned the reports, organized files, and talked quietly about their fears. Not once did Arthur use magic to cheat. Not once did the children hide who they were. They weren't going to win by being something they were not. They were going to win by being exactly who they were meant to be. On the morning of the third day, a storm gathered over the ocean. The ferry horn sounded. The review board had arrived. And the fight for the family was about to begin. The review board arrives. The sky was dark when the ferry reached the dock. Not a normal storm dark. A heavy, suffocating gray. Like the world was holding its breath. Linus, Arthur, and the children stood outside the house together. Chauncey clung to Linus's leg. Talia gripped her spade like a warrior. Zoe flickered nervously. Theodore hid in Arthur's coat. Sal trembled but stayed in human form. Lucy's hands glowed faintly. Arthur whispered, "No matter what they say, you all stay behind me." Lucy muttered, "Even if they call me the devil." Arthur smiled softly. "They can call you whatever they want. It doesn't change who you are." The Council of Fear. 3 people stepped off the ferry. They looked like they had been carved from stone. Chairwoman Hargrove, sharp eyes, white gloves, spine straight as a steel beam. Mr. Gruber, tall, stiff, his expression frozen in severe disapproval. Dr. Webb, a thin woman with round glasses, staring at the house like it might explode. Werner followed behind them. Smug, proud, confident disaster was coming. Linus felt anger heat his chest. Arthur bowed politely. "Welcome to Marsyas Island. We are honored to have you." Hargrove didn't smile. "We are not here for pleasantries, Mr. Parnassus." Her voice was cold enough to frost glass. "We are here to determine if this facility is a danger to society." Chauncey whimpered. Linus stepped forward. "I will be assisting with the evaluation." Werner scoffed loudly. "Assisting? Mr. Baker, you are the one being evaluated." Hargrove raised a hand. "Let us begin." Inside the house, the board toured the home with clipboards raised like shields. Hargrove tapped her pen against every surface. Gruber sniffed disapprovingly. Dr. Webb looked like she was trying to analyze the oxygen content inside each room. Arthur walked calmly. Linus walked nervously. The children tried their best to act normal, which for them was nearly impossible. When Chauncey tried to greet the board with a polite bow, Hargrove stepped back sharply. "What is that?" Chauncey froze. Linus kneeling beside him, voice gentle. "This is Chauncey. He wants to be a bellhop when he grows up." Chauncey nodded eagerly. "I can carry your bags. For free. As practice." Hargrove wrote something sharply. Linus felt rage simmer in his throat. The interviews begin. The board sat at a table like a panel of judges. One child at a time was called. He walked in trembling. Dr. Webb asked, "Do you often transform involuntarily?" Sal whispered, "Only when I'm scared." "Would you say you are scared often?" "No, not anymore. Arthur helps me feel safe." Linus felt tears sting his eyes. But Gruber wrote something aggressively. "Zoe." Zoe floated nervously. "What realm do you originate from?" "I don't remember." "Do you control your luminescence?" "Yes." "Demonstrate." Zoe glowed softly. The room warmed gently. Even the board looked impressed for a second. Zoe whispered, Does that help?" No response. Zoe dimmed sadly. 3. Talia. Talia stomped in with attitude. Hargrove asked, "Why do you carry a spade?" "In case someone touches my garden," Talia replied. "And what would you do if they did?" "I would bury them." Gruber choked. Linus slapped his forehead. Arthur whispered, "She's joking." "Mostly." Talia whispered to Linus. "I wasn't joking." Linus whispered back, "Please be joking just for today." Talia grunted. "Fine." For Theodore. He chirped and offered shiny buttons. The board did not know what to do with him. Dr. Webb even reached for a button, fascinated. Linus saw a small crack of humanity in her eyes. 5. Chauncey. He did a full bellhop routine. Bowling hat, greeting, luggage-carrying practice. It was adorable. Gruber still said, "What societal contribution does a creature like you provide?" Chauncey wilted. Linus clenched his jaw hard enough to hurt. 6. Lucy. Silence fell when Lucy entered. His presence made the air feel electric. Hargrove stared down from her seat. "You are Lucy?" "Yes." "Full name?" "Lucifer." The board stiffened. Lucy looked down. "But that's just my name. I don't want to hurt anyone." Werner leaned forward. "You nearly caused an incident last month." Lucy's eyes filled with shame. "It was an accident. I get scared. And when I'm scared, my power gets loud." Linus stepped in. "He is learning control. And he has more emotional awareness than most adults I know." Werner smirked. Hargrove wrote something down. Then she asked Lucy, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Lucy looked at Linus, then Arthur, and whispered, "I want to be good." Arthur's breath shook. Linus's eyes filled with tears. Even Dr. Webb paused, her pen frozen midair. But Hargrove simply said, "Noted. Time for Arthur." Finally they called Arthur. The children crowded around Linus, anxious. Lucy whispered, "They'll hurt him." "I know they will." Chauncey shook. Zoe flickered nervously. Talia clenched her jaw. Sal hid behind Linus's sleeve. Linus placed a hand on Lucy's shoulder. "Remember what Arthur always says. We face everything together." Lucy swallowed hard. Arthur sat before the board like a king in exile. Regal, calm, hiding his trembling hands beneath the table. Hargrove's voice was sharp as a blade. "Mr. Parnassus, rumors say you are not entirely human." Arthur didn't blink. "That is correct." Gruber leaned forward. "Is it true you are a phoenix?" Silence. The children froze. Linus's heart plummeted. Arthur breathed. "Yes." Chaos erupted. The board whispered violently. Werner nearly smiled. Hargrove slammed her book. This is unacceptable. A being with catastrophic magical potential. Responsible for multiple rebirth events. Acting as caretaker for unstable magical youth. Arthur's jaw tightened. I have harmed no one. Ever. My power is controlled. My purpose is to keep these children safe. Hargrove snapped. You hide your nature from the world. Arthur's voice rose for the first time. A crack of thunder in the room. Because the world has never shown me safety. I learned to survive. And now I choose to help others survive. Linus felt the air shift. Arthur was losing his calm. The phoenix inside was rising. Werner whispered. Prove you can control your fire. Arthur's breathing became unsteady. Show us, Werner pressed. Prove you're not a danger. Arthur's body trembled. Heat pulsing off him in waves. Lucy grabbed Linus's hand. He's going to burn. I know the signs. Linus stood abruptly. Stop. The room froze. Linus stepped between Arthur and the board. You do not get to provoke him. You do not get to treat him like a circus act. Arthur Parnassus is the safest man I've ever met. Hargrove hissed. This is not your place, Mr. Baker. Linus glared. Yes, it finally is. He placed a hand on Arthur's shoulder. Arthur's trembling eased. The room warmed gently. The fire settling. Linus whispered. I'm here. Breathe. Arthur looked at him, eyes softening. Saved by love, not restraint. The children rushed in, forming a circle around Arthur and Linus. A family defending their parent. Hargrove stared at the scene. Confused. Move. Threatened. All at once. This is highly irregular, she muttered. Linus stood tall. This is a family. Not a facility. The room felt like it was carved out of static and fear. Arthur sat trembling. The phoenix inside him still glowing faintly beneath his skin. The children surrounded him protectively. Their small bodies forming a shield. The review board stared in shock, not at Arthur's power, but at the sight of 6 magical children standing united, shoulder to shoulder, protecting the man who raised them. Werner's voice dripped with venom. This spectacle only proves the problem. These children are unstable. This caretaker is dangerous. And you, Mr. Baker, you have completely lost objectivity. Linus turned slowly. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't small. He wasn't quiet. He stood tall and calm. No, Linus said softly. I've found it. Hargrove frowned. Found what? Linus took a breath, shaky but brave. My humanity. Linus steps forward. He walked to the front of the room, past Arthur, past the children, and faced the review board alone. He didn't shake. He didn't look down. He spoke. When I arrived on this island, I believed in rules. I believed in structure. I believed in fear. He glanced at Lucy. I believed what the world told me about people like him. Lucy swallowed hard. Linus continued. But I lived with them. I watched them grow. I saw their hearts, their fears, their kindness, their pain. He looked at Arthur, eyes full of emotion. And I saw a man who built a home out of nothing, who taught 6 magical children what love feels like, who chose gentleness every single day, even when he had fire inside him. Arthur blinked rapidly, swallowing tears. Linus faced the board again. You say you want safety. He pointed at the children. This is safety. A home where they are not hated, where they are not experimented on, where they are not told they are monsters. He pointed at Arthur. This is safety. A man who would rather die, truly die, than let harm come to these kids. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Linus stepped closer, voice rising with passion. You call them dangerous. He gestured at Sal. Sal is afraid of his own shadow. Oi. Zoe glows when she's anxious and apologizes afterward. Chauncey. Chauncey just wants to carry someone's suitcase. Chauncey sniffed loudly. Talia only threatens people because she's small and scared. Talia huffed. True. Theodore gives everyone buttons as gifts. And finally Lucy. And Lucy is a child trying every day to convince himself he's not born to destroy the world. Lucy looked down, tears falling. Linus knelt beside him, lifted his chin gently. You are not the world's end, Lucy. You're its miracle. Lucy sobbed quietly. The children speak. Before the board could respond, Zoe floated forward. I have something to say. Everyone froze. Zoe's voice trembled, but she didn't dim. I don't remember where I came from, but I remember Arthur teaching me how to sleep without nightmares. And Linus teaching me how to not be afraid of my own glow. Sal stepped forward as well. Arthur reads my poems. No one ever did that before. Talia stomped up. He lets me have a garden. Do you know how important that is to a gnome? Chauncey bounced forward. He tells me I can be a bellhop. No one else thinks I can be anything. Theodore chirped, offering his rarest shiny button to Linus. Lucy wiped his face and stood tall. I know who I am. People fear me. Can't change that. But Arthur taught me that family is stronger than destiny. And Linus taught me that even the Antichrist deserves a chance to be good. He looked at the board. You don't have to like me. But you don't get to take away the people who love me. The room fell completely silent. Arthur's turn. Arthur rose to his feet. He didn't hide his magic this time. His eyes glowed softly. A warm ember light emanated from his skin. Not threatening. Not dangerous. Just beautiful. I am a phoenix, Arthur said quietly. And I will not apologize for what I am. I will not dim myself to fit your fear. He placed a gentle hand on Lucy's head. I have lived many years, and I have seen the worst of humanity. But here in this house, I have seen the best. Linus's eyes filled with tears. Arthur continued. I don't need your approval. He looked at the children, all 6 of them. I only need them to be safe. And they are safest with me. And with Linus. The board shifted looks. Something had changed. Something fundamental. This wasn't a facility. It was a family. The review board's dilemma. Chairwoman Hargrove slammed her folder shut. This, she began, voice shaking slightly, is unprecedented. Emotion has no place in evaluation. Linus stepped forward. You're wrong. Hargrove looked at him sharply. Linus said softly but firmly. Emotion is exactly what keeps children alive. Hargrove hesitated. Something flickered in her eyes, a crack in her glacier heart. She looked at the children, at Arthur, at Linus. Then she spoke slowly. The board will convene privately. We will return in 1 hour with our decision. They left the room. The door shut. Silence. The family holds their breath. Lucy clung to Arthur. Chauncey wiped tears. Sal's hand shook. Zoe dimmed and brightened nervously. Talia paced like a tiny general. Theodore perched on Linus's shoulder for comfort. Linus's voice shook. No matter what they say, we'll face it together. Arthur nodded. Together. He intertwined his fingers with Linus's. No one said anything else. They waited. 1 hour of fear. 1 hour of hope. 1 hour of praying that love would win over fear. The door finally opened. The board had returned. This was the moment. The fate of the orphanage hung on their next words. The room was so silent you could hear the ocean beating against the cliffs. Arthur stood with his hands on Lucy's shoulders. Linus stood beside him, heart thundering in his chest. The rest of the children clustered around them, trembling. Hargrove stepped forward with the verdict folder. Gruber and Dr. Webb stood behind her. Werner smirked, ready to witness the collapse. Hargrove cleared her throat. After careful review and analysis of the Marsyas Island orphanage, even Arthur's breath hitched. Hargrove paused. Then read. The board finds that this facility, the children squeezed each other's hands, is safe. Confusion. Lucy whispered. What? Hargrove continued. We find that this is a unique environment in which magical youth are not only managed, but nurtured, respected, seen. Arthur's knees nearly buckled. Linus caught his arm instinctively. Hargrove glanced at the children, her expression softening ever so slightly. These children are not threats. They are individuals who have been given something unprecedented. She looked at Arthur. A home built on acceptance. Dr. Webb stepped forward, adjusting her glasses. I reviewed their emotional responses during questioning. Their attachment styles are healthy. Their coping mechanisms are improving. Their behavioral self-regulation is growing at a remarkable rate. Talia whispered. Does that mean we're okay? Dr. Webb gave a small, real smile. Yes, you're safe. Theodore chirped so loudly he toppled backward. Gruber cleared his throat. My concern was structural safety. He opened his report. But this house is, astonishingly, one of the most stable and disaster-ready magical homes we have ever evaluated. Chauncey squealed. We passed. Werner staggered forward, face twisting. This is absurd. These children are unstable. This caretaker is a phoenix. Hargrove looked at him sharply. Sit down, Charles. Werner froze. No one spoke to him like that. Hargrove closed the folder. As long as Arthur Parnassus continues to operate within the best interests of these children, and as long as Mr. Linus Baker remains as ongoing evaluator support. She looked at Linus. Linus blinked. Me, he whispered. Hargrove nodded. Yes, we want you here permanently. The children erupted. Lucy grabbed Linus's hand. You're staying. Chauncey jumped. He's staying. Talia sniffed loudly, pretending not to cry. Zoe glowed pink. Sal leaned against Linus quietly. Theodore chirped excitedly on Linus's shoulder. Arthur stared at Linus, eyes full, overflowing with emotion. Werner stepped forward desperately. You can't be serious. He's compromised. He's attached. Hargrove's voice cracked like thunder. He's human. Werner froze. She continued. And for once, Mr. Baker's attachment produced a better result than your detachment ever could. Werner's face twisted in silent fury. Hargrove turned to Arthur. We grant full approval for you to continue operating this orphanage. Arthur's breath stopped. Full approval. Freedom. Security. Forever. Arthur whispered. Thank you. Hargrove closed the folder. This review is concluded. The board turned and exited the house. Werner glared at Linus one last time. This isn't over, he hissed. Linus stepped forward calmly. Yes, it is. Werner swallowed and left without another word. The ferry drifted away. And the moment it vanished around the bend of the island, the house erupted into tears. The children break down in joy. Chauncey hugged Arthur's legs. Talia punched the air. Zoe glowed so bright she lit up the whole living room. Sal cried silently. Theodore flew in frantic, excited circles. Lucy turned and pressed his face into Arthur's side. I thought we were going to lose you, he whispered. Arthur held him tightly. You will never lose me, Lucy. Never. Lucy cried harder. Arthur walks to Linus. Arthur approached Linus slowly, quietly, like a man seeing sunlight after years in darkness. Linus swallowed. Arthur. I don't know what to say. Arthur stopped right in front of him. You don't have to say anything. Linus trembled. I was scared they wouldn't listen. Arthur's voice broke. And I was scared you would leave. Linus stepped closer. So close their breath mingled. I'm not leaving, Linus whispered. I belong here. Arthur's eyes filled with tears. You do. His voice cracked. You belong with us. Linus breathed out shakily. I didn't know I could belong anywhere. Arthur took his hands gently. "I'm very glad you found us, Linus Baker." Linus looked into his eyes and saw fire, rebirth, love, and a softness that felt like home. A new beginning. The children swarmed them, cheering, hugging, glowing, bouncing. The house echoed with laughter and relief. Linus stood there among them. No longer an inspector. No longer an outsider. But a guardian, protector, parent figure. And something more to Arthur. Marsyas Island wasn't just safe. Marsyas Island was family. The storm had passed. The future had arrived. And for the first time in his life, Linus felt joy. The storm had passed. The review board was gone. And for the first time since Linus arrived on Marsyas Island, the house breathed freely. Arthur stood at the doorway, watching the children run outside in celebration. Zoe floated in circles, glowing pink. Theodore screeched with joy. Talia dug a victory hole in her garden. Chauncey attempted a celebratory bow. Sal smiled softly, writing something in his notebook. Lucy spun around with sparks floating harmlessly from his palms. Their laughter echoed across the cliffs. Arthur whispered, "They're free." Linus stood beside him. "They always should have been." Arthur turned toward him. "You did this." Linus shook his head gently. "No, Arthur. We did this." Arthur's eyes softened. "My brave caseworker." Linus's breath stuttered. He wasn't used to being called brave. He wasn't used to being called anything good. Packing up the old life. That evening, Linus returned to his room to retrieve the few belongings he still kept in his suitcase. Inside it were reminders of the old life. Gray ties, gray shirts, gray socks, a gray notebook filled with gray days. None of it looked like him anymore. He took out the rules and regulations book, once the most important thing he owned. He placed it on the table, closed it slowly, and whispered, "Thank you. But I don't need you anymore." The book stayed behind. Everything else stayed behind too. The children's gift. When he walked back downstairs, all 6 children stood waiting for him. Lucy held a crooked, hand-drawn card. Talia held a rock painted purple. "I made this. It's ugly. But it's for you." Chauncey gave him a bow tie. "A real bellhop has 5 bow ties. You should have one too." Sal handed him a folded poem. "I wrote it for when you feel scared." Zoe floated down with a tiny glowing orb. "So you don't get lost in the dark." Theodore placed a shiny button in Linus's hand. The rarest one he owned. Linus choked on emotion. You didn't have to." Lucy interrupted quietly. "You're staying, right?" The world seemed to hold its breath. Linus looked at their faces. All hope, all fear, all love. He knelt and opened his arms. All 6 ran into him at once. "Yes," Linus whispered, voice breaking. "I'm staying." The children cheered so loud the windows shook. Arthur covered his mouth, tears falling silently. Arthur and Linus on the cliffs. Later, when the children fell asleep after a day of celebration, Linus and Arthur walked to their cliff, their place. The moon shimmered on the water. The tide breathed softly. Arthur took Linus's hand. "Linus Baker," he whispered. "You have changed this island." Linus squeezed his hand gently. "And this island changed me." Arthur turned to him fully, firelight glowing faintly in his eyes. "I have lived many lives," he said softly. "But this life, with him, with you, is the first that feels like it belongs to me." Linus swallowed hard. "I want to spend the rest of it here," he whispered. "With you. With them." Arthur leaned his forehead against Linus's. "Then stay." "I'm staying." "You promise?" Linus smiled, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I promise." Arthur's voice cracked. "Then welcome home, Linus. The new beginning." Linus walked back to the house. Not the inspector. Not the outsider. Not the man who lived in gray. But the man who found color. The man who found family. Arthur followed beside him, their hands brushing as they walked. Inside, the children slept peacefully in the glow of warmth Arthur created. Linus took one final look around the home. The messy shoes, the floating toys, the shiny buttons scattered everywhere. The smell of Arthur's cooking still lingering. This was his life now. This was where he belonged. He exhaled deeply. For the first time, Linus felt his heart settle. Not in fear, not in obligation, not in loneliness, but in love. And Marsyas Island, with all its magic, chaos, and strange beauty, became his forever home.